The effects of Orton-Gillingham instruction on reading achievement of elementary students with disabilities. Hi, I'm Holly Nutzman, and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College. I teach kindergarten through 3rd grade special education at OEBCIG Elementary in Ida Grove. I chose this topic after attending a conference on Orton-Gillingham last spring. When I went to this conference, I was looking for something new for my students and for all students in my school that included phonics. As a school, we had been brainstorming ways to increase reading scores, and we had agreed that phonics is a major component that has been missing from our reading instruction. Most of my students also have reading goals, and most of those goals include the development of phonics skills to build towards more complex reading skills. What is the problem? Reading proficiency has decreased not only in my school, but in many schools in the United States. Reading is a required skill for students to be successful as they continue in school and as they become adults in society. We use reading in most occupations, and it is also used to access information in our ever-changing world. To be able to get to this point, students need to be exposed to essential components of reading, such as phonemic awareness and phonics, so that they can develop more complex skills later on, such as fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. Phonics development. Children need to have skills to build on when they are learning more complex reading skills. Two of these main skills, phonics and phonemic awareness, are being left out of many widely used reading interventions. These skills also lead to decoding skills, which lead to fluency later on, and also to the development of language skills. Students with disabilities. Of intellectually disabled students, 85% are considered to have mild disabilities. These students are more likely to achieve higher levels of independent learning and self-sufficiency. These students, more than others, need to have access to early key reading skills so that gaps do not exist later on for them as they are trying to read. Students who are unable to develop these skills are more likely to have a lower quality of life in their future. Without these skills, it is difficult to develop fluency, comprehension, and effective reading of complex texts. Past interventions. One popular intervention that is widely used in elementary schools, including my own, is reading recovery. According to a lot of research, it is a highly successful and widely used reading intervention. But according to more recent research, it lacks essential components of reading instruction, including phonics and phonemic awareness. This recent research shows that reading recovery is ineffective in the long-term development of reading skills. Phonics decoding and word recognition interventions. One study that focused on raising literacy achievement by improving phonics decoding and word recognition skills showed that working on such skills improves decoding skills, but does not directly correlate to comprehension and fluency. This article also discusses the importance of working on these skills while also connecting them to other foundational reading skills and transferring the skills when participating in oral reading activities. Phonics and oral reading. Phonics programs paired with oral reading interventions have lasting effects on reading, spelling, and fluency. These programs may include rhyming, segmenting, blending, and changing phonemes to manipulate words paired with typical oral reading activities. The results from one such study showed increases in spelling sounds, reading fluency, vocabulary acquisition, and comprehension. Students in this study grew an average of 16.8 months in word identification, 8.75 months in spelling sounds, 14.29 months in fluency, and 10.7 months in comprehension. Multisensory phonics instruction. A component that may be missing from many past and current reading interventions, even those that do include phonics, is the use of multisensory instructional methods. Current studies suggest that the use of such methods in phonics and reading instruction have a long-lasting effect on reading development. My proposed intervention for this study is Orton-Gillingham. Orton-Gillingham was developed as a direct, explicit way to teach reading, writing, and spelling to students who struggle with the development of those skills. Its methods aim to improve word analysis, sight word automaticity, and spelling skills. It has a heavy focus on phonology, phonological awareness, sound-symbol relationships, syllables, syntax, and semantics. One major thing that sets this intervention apart from the rest is its use of multisensory instructional methods. The cognitive learning theory derives from Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. This theory explains how the brain processes and interprets new information. Effective cognitive processes make new learning easier. When learning is done in a memorable way, people are more likely to remember it. This goes along with multisensory instruction. Combining visual, auditory, and kinesthetic cues while learning a new concept help to more easily recall information and apply it later. Orton-Gillingham also uses mnemonics, which are memory devices that help to retrieve info from the memory. A multisensory approach. When activities stimulate multiple senses, the learning process is more meaningful and engaging. According to research, more progress is made in reading and spelling when multisensory instruction is involved. Orton-Gillingham uses chants, songs, motions, rhymes, visuals, and other things that engage multiple senses during learning. These encourage the students to remember and more easily recall that information later on. Goals and objectives. The purpose of this research was to determine the influence of multisensory phonics instruction, specifically Orton-Gillingham, on reading achievement in elementary students with intellectual disabilities. The hypothesis for the study was that the implementation of the Orton-Gillingham phonics intervention would show an increase in reading achievement of elementary students with intellectual disabilities. The independent variable was the implementation of Orton-Gillingham instruction, and the dependent variable was scores from the Phonics and Pinnell benchmark assessment. The possible impacts that were considered at the beginning of the study were that the results of the study could be used to help teachers make decisions about teaching foundational reading skills to students with intellectual disabilities, that this study could be used to show the effectiveness of multisensory instruction, and that the results from the study would help to determine whether or not I would continue to use this intervention with my students. Other teachers that I worked with were also interested to know the effects of this intervention and if it would be helpful for their students as well. Methodology. The participants from this study included 10 students from kindergarten to 5th grade who received special education services for reading. There were 3 girls and 7 boys. For these lessons, I used materials developed within the Orton-Gillingham program. The first part of every lesson was a 3-part drill. The materials used for this part were sound cards, the blending board, sand trays, and vowel-intensive cards. The rest of the lesson used house handwriting paper, red word paper, screens, dictation sheets, rapid word charts, flashcards, red crayons, read-aloud books, spelling workbooks, and adaptive phonics materials. To determine where to begin with each group of students, I used the Orton-Gillingham phonics assessment. To assess their progress, the Phonics and Pinnell reading assessment was used. After a 4-week baseline period, all students were involved in an 8-week treatment phase where they received 30 minutes of daily Orton-Gillingham instruction. Daily instruction starts with the 3-part drill, which is a review of known phonemes, the writing of graphemes in the sand trays, and blending sound cards. Students then participated in the vowel-intensive drill, which prompted students to identify the vowels that they heard in words and in word parts. Then we moved on to the instruction of a new sound, which included word and sentence dictation to practice the new sound. Then there was a literature connection, where a read-aloud book was used that focused on the new sound, and older students also had a leveled text to practice that sound. Red word instruction is the teaching of grade-level sight words for students to develop automaticity and spelling skills. Each group also had daily practice of individual phonics skills. To collect data, a baseline assessment was taken using the Phonics and Pinnell benchmark assessment. After a 4-week baseline period, the assessment was given again. It was given for a 3rd time after the 8-week intervention period. Data was analyzed after the intervention period. The data shows a statistically significant increase in student reading achievement as a result of the Orton-Gillingham instruction. The low p-score of .007 confirms that the Orton-Gillingham instruction directly influenced reading achievement. The initial mean score was 46.4% in accuracy, and the mean increased to 69.5% after the intervention period. Tables 1 and 2 show the difference in p-scores and means from the beginning of the study and the end of the intervention. This figure shows the increase of accuracy scores from the beginning of the study to the end of the intervention. Connecting results to research. Results from the study coincide with other recent research. Recent studies have shown an increase in retention and transfer of early reading skills and number sense when teachers are using multisensory methods. This study, along with other research, has supported the idea that multisensory instruction increases academic achievement. The study also supported the cognitive learning theory. Recall that the cognitive learning theory explains how the brain processes and interprets new information during learning. Orton-Gillingham uses many cognitive strategies. The results from this study suggest that the use of multisensory instruction and cognitive strategies have positive effects on reading achievement. Implications, limitations, and recommendations. The implications that can be drawn from the study include that young and developing readers need access to phonics instruction. A lack of phonics skills can cause gaps in reading development that continue to widen over time. The use of multisensory methods incorporated in reading instruction can be beneficial for the retention and transfer of knowledge and skills. Another thing to be drawn from the study is the benefits of a small teacher-to-student ratio when teaching developing reading skills. The most that this teacher worked with at a time was 3 students. This study should encourage educators to realize the importance of phonics instruction for beginning and struggling readers. Limitations. The study had a few limitations, the biggest being the small sample size. Only 10 students were studied, and all of these students had disabilities. It would be interesting to see a larger sample size and also to see the results on students who did not receive special education services. There was also a variation in student age. Students in the study had a different set of skills that they had acquired over time, and the older kids had more gaps in their reading skills because of the lack of foundational skills to build on. It is very possible that this was an influence on the younger students making more progress than the older students. There's also a variation in the type of severity of disability that each student had. Some students just had a learning disability, while others had more severe disabilities on top of speech or hearing goals. Another thing to consider is the level of parent involvement. Some students have more access to materials and support at home, which could have influenced their progress. I would also like to see the study done over a longer period of time to show more in-depth results and to be able to compare it to other interventions that have been deemed successful. I would recommend to continue this research to validate the findings. Based on the limitations, I would recommend testing the impact of this intervention on students from all learning levels, comparing it to other interventions, and to perform it for a longer period of time, even over several years if possible, to determine long-term effects and progress. In conclusion, the results of this study confirm an increase in reading accuracy scores for students with intellectual disabilities after receiving Orton-Gillingham instruction. The development of phonics skills is important for beginning readers and students who have skill deficits in reading. Using multisensory methods makes phonics instruction especially effective for learning and transference of skills. These are the references that I used for my paper for this presentation, and they're just good sources if you are looking to learn about phonics, about multisensory instruction, about teaching students with disabilities, and anything else having to do with literature. Thank you for listening.